I said, what would you say to a mother who is desperate to get her child into a good school and you've reduced the number of places at that good school so she can't get her child in? Ms. Phillipson did not have a response. She's saying she loves academies, but if you take away those freedoms from academies, they are no longer academies. It's the freedoms that we've got that have raised standards. She said to me several times, well, we just disagree. And I said, well, what experience do you have? Have you ever run a school? Have you ever been a teacher? Do you know what I'm talking about? She's not listening.
Hello, I'm Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, and I'm delighted to be joined in conversation with Katharine Birbalsingh, the head of the Michaela School. Katharine, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Katharine, a lot of people know about Labour's war on private schools, but some of the things it's planning for state schools, which affect a far larger number of pupils, and schools like your own are probably a bit less well known. You have written 2 open letters to Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. You've had meetings with her about her plans. I think it's fair to say you're deeply unimpressed by what's being proposed. Could you give the viewer a sense of what she's planning and why is it so dangerous?
Yeah, sure. And, most importantly, why is she not asking questions of the successful leaders in the country, school leaders, who obviously know more than she does about how to run a successful school? So what are the things? She's taking away the freedoms that academies currently have, that school leaders have, to do what's best for their particular cohort of children. And she's trying to centralize this so that she's the one in charge, as opposed to us being in charge. Now, there aren't very many freedoms that we've got, to be honest. They're very few. For instance, we're able to decide what sort of uniform we would like for our children. We're able to have varied routes of teachers coming into the profession, and we're able to hire people from a whole variety of different walks of life that don't have a particular bureaucratic stamp that she's now saying they need to have. We're able to tailor our curriculum according to our intake. Some intakes, we're in the inner city with children who struggle with literacy and numeracy. So we want to give lots of maths and English. Elsewhere, you have a school in the Cotswolds with a more middle class intake. Perhaps you won't have those same issues, for instance. And so you will have a different, curriculum. She wants to make it so that what we call the PAN. So this is the number of children that you have in every year group. She wants to make it so that if we have 120 children, let's say, she looks to a next nearby school and says, oh, but they should have 120 kids in their year group. We're going to take, and they only have 100, we're going to take 20 from this school and put them over there and reduce the number of children that we can have, thereby reducing the number of good places that are available for families. At my meeting with her, I asked her, I said, what would you say to a mother who is desperate to get her child into a good school and you've reduced the number of places at that good school so she can't get her child in? Ms. Phillipson did not have a response. So, and not only is it going to affect parents because there will be fewer places in good schools, but it's the case that the good schools will not have as much money because the money that comes to us comes via the number of kids that we've got. The key thing that everyone needs to understand is what makes academies currently successful, and they have been hugely successful. We have 800 visitors that come to see us from around the world every year. Australia, America. There are all kinds of people who come from abroad who are in education elsewhere. They come to England to learn from what we've done. They don't, for instance, go to Scotland because in Scotland, the education system is far more centralized in the way that Bridget Phillipson wants to take things, right? The freedoms that academies have that make them strong because the school leaders are able to tailor what they do to their specific intake. She is removing those freedoms from the academies. At the same time, she's saying she loves academies. But the very thing that makes academies academies are those freedoms. If you take away those freedoms from academies, they are no longer academies. So she's not really telling the truth when she says, I love academies. In fact, when I spoke with her, I could see her twist her face every time she said the word academy because she hates them. And her voting record has proved that. Throughout her career, she has voted against academy, all the reforms that went through making schools academies and so on, she's voted against. Now, suddenly she's education secretary. People like me and other school leaders are arguing that academies have made a huge difference to the quality of education that children are getting in this country. She's then gone, oh gosh, I can't be against academies now. Let me pretend to be pro-academy. Meanwhile, I'm going to change things to make it so that they aren't really academies in their essence.
And a lot of what you're saying, it might make sense to have more central government control. If you were running rogue, failing schools, there was no discipline, if the teachers were incapable of doing their jobs, that might be understandable, but that's not the case, is it? You're running an excellent school. There are many other excellent schools that are using their freedoms wisely. What do you think is driving Bridget Phillipson's decision?
Yeah, well, that's what's interesting. I don't think she hates poor children, and I don't think she wants to ruin good schools. She will, in the end, harm poor children and ruin good schools, and she'll make it more difficult for more good schools to come about because it's through. To give you an example, every day when we get guests here, and we get 10, 15 guests, and I talk to them briefly for 10, 15 minutes downstairs just to welcome them and say, come and see the school, etc. And there are always teachers who say, my school is in this situation. How do we turn things around? How do we get our school to be more like yours? And I always say, you need to start with behavior. We need to get behavior to be better in schools before you go to the quality of the teaching. You want to start with behavior. And in terms of making behavior better, it's a theory called broken windows theory that you need to apply, which is you deal with the small stuff. You look after the pennies, the pounds take care of themselves. It's the same idea here. You need to have a uniform and you need to deal with the small issues on the uniform. Are the ties to the top? Are the shirts tucked in? Etc. The uniform is going to give you a sense of belonging in the school. She is tying our hands behind our backs as school leaders by preventing school leaders from having more than 3 branded items. Now, the reason she's doing that is she thinks, well, they cost money, therefore we need to stop that. She hasn't asked any of us for the details of why it is. All of the top schools, I've looked at all of them, they all have at least 5 or 6 branded items. So that's interesting, isn't it? Why is it that all the top schools have loads of branded items, right? They're not doing it because they want poor kids to spend more money. They're not doing that. And in fact, you'll find that we all have systems of secondhand uniform to help the poorer families. We all have systems where certain families, you would actually pay for certain items of uniform and so on. So that it isn't true that we hate poor families, okay, us school leaders. If the better schools have got more branded items, there's a reason, but she's not interested in asking any of us. And so there's a great example of how she's, her bill is going to undermine, with the advice I'm giving to those schools, how do you make your school more like ours? They're not going to be able to follow that advice. So she thinks this costs families money. We need to stop that from happening. Her Marxist instinct, and when I say Marxist, in fact, in the meeting, it was quite interesting. She didn't ask us questions, me and my deputy. She didn't ask us, she didn't say, so fascinating how you last year at Michaela managed to get 52% nines at your school, and Eton got 53%. So you more or less matched Eton in the number of 9s that you got. Tell us how you did it. What do you, there was no curiosity. Let me know because I'd like to spread the word. She didn't do that. But I'll tell you the one question she did want to know an answer to. She asked me right at the end, and she was genuinely interested. She said, why do you continuously call me a Marxist, right? And she doesn't actually understand why I'm calling her a Marxist. And I'll explain. She believes in the centralized state. And she believes in removing whatever little freedoms we have as school leaders from us. She doesn't trust us at making those decisions. And she'd like to pull those freedoms out and put those with the centralized state. And that removes freedoms from mothers who want to send their children to good schools because the number of places at good schools will possibly be reduced because those freedoms no longer exist with the academies. She wants to pull those freedoms from school leaders, who are able to adapt their uniform according to their intake, who are able to adapt their curriculum according to their intake, who are able to use various different routes to bring new teachers into the profession. She wants to close those down. She's also, by the way, she just in the middle of the year, she has cancelled the Latin for Excellence program, which put Latin into state schools. Now, I'm saying that I didn't use that program. I do not offer Latin at Michaela, but there are schools, deprived schools up in the north, offering Latin to state school kids so that they can compete with those boys at Eton. And she's pulled the funding from them. There's the maths advanced program that both trains maths teachers and has brought in 50% more kids doing maths at A level. She's cut their funding, halved it, right? So we're going to have fewer maths teachers in our classrooms, and it's the case that fewer kids will be taking maths A level. Now, in what world is this helping state school children? And the thing is, she just keeps repeating it ad infinitum. It's just a floor. It's not a ceiling. It's a floor. It's not a ceiling. So I said to her, okay, so what floor are you worried about? I said, you're talking about a floor with regard to the curriculum. Name me one school that does not provide a floor core curriculum for their children. She couldn't name one. So you're telling me you're having to bring out this legislation because the floor isn't being met, but you can't tell me one school where they're not meeting that floor. I also asked her, what top schools have you been to visit? The top schools that I've just listed as having 5 to 6 branded items. And they're doing that for a reason. Tell me, which of those schools have you visited? She could not answer. She said to me, it's a matter of public record, what schools I've been to. Well, I don't know. I looked at that public record. I can't find the public record. And why can't you just tell me? Why don't you just tell me? I went to see this school. I said, okay, so you don't have to tell me the school. Tell me then what ideas you saw in the school. What techniques are they using? She couldn't tell me. She didn't ask me what techniques we're using. I'm beside myself because we have got a woman who is a Marxist in the most important position, as far as I'm concerned, a cabinet minister who is in charge of the future of the country because our children are the future of the country. And she is making decisions that are not informed. She doesn't know what she's doing. She hasn't been to see the excellent schools. She hasn't got the school leaders advising. She's not listening. She said to me several times, well, we just disagree. We just disagree. I just think it's fine the way the uniform, her decisions on uniform. And I said, well, what experience do you have? Have you ever run a school? Have you ever been a teacher? Do you know what I'm talking about? She's not listening. And I've been doing this 25 years. I've been working in the inner city. 25 years I've been changing the lives of disadvantaged children and getting them to the top universities and getting them to compete with the boys at Eton. And then when I say to her, you are literally tying our hands behind our backs, she says, well, we just disagree. I mean, honestly, I'm so upset about it. And there are real problems for schools. I'm not saying the schools are all brilliant. I'm not saying that. Of course not. There are real problems. There are issues that school leaders are complaining around SEND, their special needs. They're complaining about issues around absenteeism. They're complaining about recruitment. Recruitment is a major issue for schools. And yet she's closing off a route for teachers to come in to the profession. So she's going to make it even more difficult for us to recruit. Honestly, and what is she doing about SEND? What is she doing about absence? Though that's where her priority should lie. But because she's a Marxist, she's just driven by this idea of the state taking back control. And so when she says, the important thing for your listeners to recognize is that when she says she loves academies, it's not true. She is going to take their freedoms, which makes them into normal schools. It's the freedoms that we've got that have empowered us and that have raised standards over the last decade and a half.
And do you think there's just a culture, whether this is Phillipson herself, but I think more broadly in the education establishment or in Labour or in the political class, the culture of low expectations, particularly for working class pupils, for ethnic minority pupils, something that your school has clearly shown should not exist. You know, your school has shown that these pupils can achieve very highly, but there is a sense that, oh well, they're always going to do badly. What can you do? Would you agree with that?
No, I don't actually. That's why I call her a Marxist. So I don't think that she dislikes poor kids. I don't think that she thinks they can't achieve. I think she wants to help them. She's just delusional about how to help them. She's
Mm.
just got a Marxist mentality, which says to her the way to help children is to centralize the powers in the state, as opposed to allowing school leaders and families choice about where they send their children to school and school leaders' choice about how they run their schools. She thinks she's doing the right thing. That's the thing that's really quite devastating about it, because I don't think she's a bad person at all. I think she really wants the same things I want. It's just that she doesn't have the experience on the ground to know what works. And she's also too arrogant to listen to me or any other school leader who is telling her the opposite. I'm not the only one who's upset about this bill. There are loads of school leaders who are upset about it. They are speaking out. They are saying, but the problem is, the public don't know what's in the bill. It is just schools at the end of the day. It's not necessarily a vote winner. So people they're not going to know those details, which is why, I'm out there just fighting. I'm fighting for my kids. That's what I'm doing. I'm fighting for the schools that desperately want to teach Latin, that desperately want to teach maths, that are desperate for recruitment avenues to bring more teachers into the profession, who are desperate to be able to use uniform in a clever way so that they can change the behavior in their schools. Behavior is one of the number one things that she should be looking at and improving. And yet, by a uniform, she is going to make behavior worse in our schools. She just doesn't understand it. And, really, I would need 5 hours to go into the details of why those things really, really matter. But the fact is, I know I'm on the ground. So do all these other school leaders. And she's ripping away our freedoms, which allow us to make our schools excellent.
And one thing that Michaela School is very unapologetic about is that it is promoting British culture, British values, which is very unfashionable in educational circles, but I think a lot of people actually at home would agree is extremely important. Yeah. And you've had a lot of success in integrating people of all different faiths and backgrounds and cultures. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because they're doing a national curriculum review at the moment. And she's putting through in this bill now that everyone must follow the national curriculum. So we will no longer be able to tailor our curriculum according to our intakes and what we want to do as school leaders. She's making us agree to that now before she's actually reviewed the curriculum and changed it to force us to do whatever it is she has planned for us next. Now, we, for instance, are great believers in teaching British history. We are great believers in promoting a Britishness amongst our kids and having a sense of belonging. That comes through uniform, another thing that she is attacking, okay, that will prevent us from doing that. And who knows what she has in store with regard to the curriculum. Decolonization has certainly been mentioned many times by Becky Francis and the people who are involved in this. So I don't know what's going to happen, and I am ringing the alarm bells right now, because for those of us that are more traditional, those of us who believe in as you say, a sense of Britishness, in ensuring that all of our children in the country, whatever their race, whatever their religion, that all of us are empowered to belong to the country, belong to our school. When the England football team go out to play, they all wear the same shirt because they're part of the same team. Same with uniform. We're all part of the same team at the school. We fly a British flag outside because we're all British together. Ritual matters. The shirts that we wear on our backs matter. If you don't understand this and you're a bit of a Marxist and you think, well, none of those sorts of things matter, then you butcher school policy in the way that she's doing via the centralized state.
Another thing that Michaela is famous for is not having any kind of special pleading from certain identity groups or religious groups. You were successful, you were taken to court, but you successfully defeated a challenge to your ban on ritual prayers. Can you say why it's so important to be able to hold the line on those things and to not give in to sectarian or identitarian interests?
Yeah, because our position at the school is that for multiculturalism to work, we all need to make various sacrifices. And the various different groups that we've got here, because we've got Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Jehovah Witnesses, we've got everybody. We've also got kids from a whole variety of different backgrounds, black, brown, and white. And in order for us all to get along with each other, we can't just say what we want goes. My group, my tribal group is the one that should dominate. In fact, what we need to do is share in this overall British experience. Of course, there are some things. Our girls wear hijabs, our Sikhs wear bangles. I get that, right? That's fine, because they don't undermine the experience of the whole. But it may be the case that you have to sacrifice certain things that are important to you for the betterment of the whole. So we are vegetarian because we all eat a family lunch together. We all need to be able to share the food out. Now, religious reasons, some kids eat meat but no pork. Some eat meat but no beef. Fine. In order for us all to eat together, we go vegetarian. So we sacrifice. Similarly with the prayer rituals, I don't want some of my Muslim children going that way and then my other children going this way. And given that half the school is Muslim, I do not want to divide half the school from non-Muslims to Muslims. That would be to divide the children according to race and religion, and we're not going to do that. And so the Muslim children, the vast majority of them, more than happy to make that sacrifice. And then they do their prayers at home. At the end of the day, they can go to the civic center and they do their prayers there. Our sixth formers actually, because they're older, they don't do family lunch, they're able to go off to the civic center at lunchtime and pray, and they're also allowed out, whereas our younger ones, obviously, it's too dangerous to let them out, so that doesn't happen. And it's fine. It all works very happily, and the kids are very happy, and your viewers or listeners would be very welcome to come and visit us. All you need to do is go on our website, you sign up for a visit, and come and see what we do here. Everybody always talks about how happy and joyful our children are, how proud they are of their school, and of course how knowledgeable they are, in particular, as you will be interested in British history, and in feeling very much as if they belong to their school.
Katharine Birbalsingh, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Fraser.